it's really my pleasure tonight to bring back Junior Bike Chat. I hope everybody's gotten settled in with their classes. We took a little bit of a hiatus there a little bit over the summer. This one's on Bikepacking 101, and it's really my pleasure to bring on board tonight Henrik Klessmann, who's actually in Manchester. He's joining us from Manchester, and so he's what time is it there now, Henrik?
It's midnight, pretty much.
Oh, geez. Right. So yes, thank you very much for coming on. And then we also have Robert Britton from rally cycling, and so it's very interesting. It'll be very interesting to hear about his stories about how he integrates bike packing in with his training and how he's able to race professionally with that. I just want to give a special thanks out to Hunter Wilson, who's joining us as our guest moderator from Cal Poly Cycling and Team California, and then Katie Burford from Juniors Matters, who helps us with putting together these sessions. And I'm Sean Wilson, and I'm representing the Youth Cycling Association, as well as BC Fitness and Cafe. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are live streaming. Actually, we're live streaming on Facebook, not on YouTube tonight. And it's going to be on our Junior Cycling Network later on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So you can watch it there. Please place any questions you have for the panelists in the QA box on Zoom, and we'll have Hunter moderating those. And we do monitor the chat window on Facebook also for additional questions. So if you have anything, for those of you who are listening out in Facebook land, just go ahead and put those in there, and we'll get to those also. All right, so I'm going to hand this over to Hunter now. I'm going to have to quit my share. Let's see here. I need to stop my screen sharing. How do I do that? Wants to give me a new share. Oh, there we go. Stop share. There we go.
There we go. So yep, I'll be moderating today, and so I'll be just kind of helping the flow of things. And so we'll get underway. I'll just share my screen here, and then we start presenting. Here we go. Can you guys see the slides?
Yep.
Okay. So this is kind of the intro slide. So I think Rob, you're up first.
Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of what my kit looks like. The one on the right is everything I took with me in last year when I did about a 2-week trip in Japan. So I'd never been, just kind of planned it, and this is only my second big trip that I've done. So like a bit of an introduction to talk about that is yeah, I race professionally on the road for rally cycling. I've been doing this as a professional for better part of 10 years now. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I started to think about this bike packing stuff, kind of in like pretty negative sense. I made fun of people for doing it, and like I had no interest, cyclotourists or randoneers, this kind of thing. And then one day, I just kind of woke up with this like idea in my head. This is something that I kind of wanted to do, or at least try. I lived in the Rocky Mountains at the time in Calgary, Alberta, and decided I wanted to ride from there to Victoria, British Columbia, which is on the west coast of Canada. And it's about 1,000 miles, and I wanted to do it in 8 days. And then on top of that, I wanted to go to the World Championships about a week later in Austria. So it's not a very typical preparation, but that trip kind of started me down the rabbit hole. And, you know, sleeping bags and air mattresses and different tents and bags and tires and bikes and gear and everything, you know, has changed. I've only become more and more passionate about this kind of this adventure lifestyle of like bike packing, while still trying to be the best professional road racer I can be, you know, with the team only increasing its stature and racing more and more difficult races around the globe. So yeah, that's this photo. it looks simultaneously, when I look at it, it looks like a lot of stuff and not that much at the same time. So everything on the left there all kind of goes into the bag at the top of the screen with the red on it. That's my seat bag. The frame bag kind of holds like day-to-day accessories, and then the stuff on the far right is my whole sleeping system. So tent, air mattress, sleeping bag, pillow, these kind of things. And that goes on the bar. And then I have a little like bar purse that your important things like cash, electronics you don't want to get wet, all of that goes in there, and then a little tool bag. And finally, there's a bento box on top of my top tube for my snacks. But yeah, that's basically that slide in a nutshell. A few little things, so just like I always like to have lights front and rear, in addition to like just blinking lights to kind of keep you safe. I learned pretty quick that I'm not very good at realizing how short the days are in the fall, and I think the majority of my rides finish in the dark, so you got to have a good light. Ideally something with a great battery, and for where I've seen ride, it's a great battery that works in the cold. And yeah, so that was pretty good lesson to learn early on. But yeah, that's, I guess, sort of the basic rundown of there. I mean, you can ask a question if people want to take a look at it and ask questions. I can kind of answer it, but yeah, that's sort of short trip or short answer to yeah, the Japan trip.
Do you want to talk about the bike at all, since it's part of the left image there?
Yeah. So usually I do my trips on my cross bike or my gravel bike. Even the one in Japan, though it was like 95% road. Still, I just like having the bigger volume tires. That'll just make your life more comfortable. But I set it up just for a short trip in the summer on the road bike. Our road bikes take like 30 mil tires. So you set those up tubeless. The gearing's great. Obviously, they roll a bit faster than the gravel bike, and the fit the bag's great. So Apodura helps me out with bags, and it's that whole setup. Pardon me, that whole setup is actually quite light, and the bike handles surprisingly well with all the gear on it. Considering it's an aero road bike, it's actually pretty sweet. But yeah, everything you see there, that has enough stuff to get you by. If you can get by for, like, I don't take that much different stuff between 3 days and 7 days or 10 days. It just depends on where you're kind of going and the temperature ranges you're going to be working with. If it's going to be really warm and you can be sure of that, you can cut that kit down significantly. But if you're going to have cold weather, that's kind of like, you can't really mess around with that, because if you have cold and wet, you can't really risk not packing your down jacket and like a proper raincoat, because yeah, those days suck.
What did you eat at night?
That's the bike.
Like,
pardon?
I'm just not seeing like a cooker or anything. Like, did you? Oh, actually, yes. Did you cook at night? Or...
Yeah. So if I'm rolling and I can't, ideally, like if I can avoid cooking at night, especially, I'd prefer to just get like a meal from a restaurant and then set up camp after that. But I always have a stove with camp fuel, and if I'm pretty sure I can find restaurants, I'll always still bring a couple like dehydrated meals. But if I'm not sure, then I'll pack exactly what I need for those nights, and then I always make breakfast and coffee in the morning. That's pretty much coffee for sure. Breakfast is ideal, but yeah, I don't think I think I've gone one day bike packing and not had coffee in the morning, and that was because my camp fuel ran out about halfway through boiling water. So that was a sad day.
I like the 5 gels though. Is it gels? Yeah.
Blocks. Shameless shout out to Clip Bar.
Sweet. You want me to go to the next slide?
Sure. Yeah, so that's this was a trip I did on the back end of like an ultra like crazy long ride. My teammate and I, so initially my good friend and I did this thing on Solstice. So we rode the entire length of Vancouver Island, which is about 300 and some odd miles in a day. And then we stayed at the furthest point north, and then we were going to bike pack 5 days back down, halfway down. So 500K up, and then we were only going to go like 350K back, and then stay at this surf town. We're going to take a float plane, and it was a cool adventure. So this all happened because COVID and everything got canceled. So we try to come up with new and different things. And the big ride was really cool. And then to do bike packing on the back end of that ended up being really rad. And I found this place just through exploring maps that, you start kind of getting used to how things look and like where you can go and like how to read maps and how they can take you places. And I didn't realize like just the adventures that are in my backyard. And this was day one of that trip. Unfortunately, this is about as good as it got. We picked up some food poisoning from the trip with some gas station sub sandwiches. And so this was about 24 hours after the long ride. Or not even, like, this is the very next day. So we rode down basically to where you can kind of see that those islands. We rode all the way down to the water. It's like straight down at like 15%, knowing full well we had to turn around and go back up. It was just a camping spot on the water I wanted to stay at. And that night I got pretty sick. The temperature dropped to like just above freezing, and it was pouring rain and gale force winds off the water. So when I woke up at like 5 a.m. because it's summer solstice, so it's bright pretty much till 11, and then it's bright again at like 4 a.m. So you don't get much darkness. And when I woke up at like 4, my vestibule, like the door of my tent, was fully blown in. All my shoes were soaked from the rain. It's pretty wet inside the tent, but not too bad. I was pretty cold, and then I was pretty sick. And then we had that 15% grade to climb back up to this to start the day. And that was, so if this was kind of a cool feature of the day, the very next day when I got to this point was the beginning of probably like the longest, hardest, most miserable day I've ever had on a bike in my life. It rained all day. Initially, we were supposed to go camp that night, and I was pretty confident that if we actually did that, I was going to die. So we kind of called an audible. I had another friend who was on the way who was in a very similar boat to me. We were both in a bad spot, exhausted from the previous day's ride, food poisoning on top of that. It was cold, wet, no rest. We ended up riding back to the town we started in that day, booking a hotel for a night. I think we all were out by like 8:45, just passed out in our beds, and then got up at like 9, so almost 12 hours sleep, or more than 12 hours sleep. And it was just enough to kind of get us going the next couple of days. So of all the racing I've done in my life, that little bike packing trip there with this picture kind of was the hardest thing I've ever done on a bike. I've never been that cold in my life. I think I shivered for like probably 6 hours once we got to the hotel. So I had like 3-hour-long showers. Yeah. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's this whole year was just sort of unique challenge on top of unique challenge. At a certain point, bike racing becomes pretty like methodical, and like it has a certain script that it follows a lot of times. Hard days, easy days, mountain days, flat days. These things are all, I've been doing long enough that you start to know what to expect to a degree. But this, like bikepacking, kind of these cool adventure rides I was doing, this is all new to me. And like, I'm sure like Henrik can relate. It's like, it's like you can plan. It's very, very important to plan. I can get to that later on, but like, even with all the planning in the world, it's like, what makes it kind of cool is like those experiences you have while you're out there. And like, I don't have the experience like of doing, dozens of these trips. I'm still very new to this part of cycling, even though I've been riding a bike my whole life. So that's really, really cool to me. So, yeah.
Thanks for that story. That was, you wouldn't have guessed from this picture that you were going to have a very tough following 24 hours.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Sure.
Oh, Henrik, you had something you want to?
I was just wondering when you said that you did like just a bikepacking trip like a week before the World Championships, like did that work for you?
Yeah, it worked out pretty well. I ended up being in the break for the entire day, and then was only one of, I think, 50 people to finish the race. And my teammate Mike Woods ended up getting third, so it was pretty much job done. So it worked.
Yeah,
thankfully.
That's definitely an interesting concept, using, bike packing, which is obviously very hard, but right before a very hard bike race, because usually you would think about doing interval sets or racing to get into shape, but you took the alternative approach, seemed to pay off for you.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't independently just bike packing. The season has been quite decent that year. I had a pretty good lead into Tour of Utah, and then on the back end of that, I did a bunch of work leading into the Quebec and Montreal World Tour races. So I had a lot of kind of like foundational points along the way, and then the bike packing was just sort of this big volume block without bringing in a lot of intensity or like mental fatigue. Like when it gets to be late in the season, sometimes you're like physically you're fine, you're okay, but mentally you're just sick of like the monotony of intervals, long ride, like this motor. Like eventually it's like that becomes more fatiguing than the mentally than just the physical side of it. Whereas the bike packing, like you have these big hard days, but like you're on an adventure, you're having fun with your friends. So yeah, it's just different.
So Sean is telling me to look at the questions. So I think we have a few here. So I'll pull those in real quick and take a look at it. Oh, it's not going to let me see it. All right. So to those asking questions, once we get through the slides, we'll start answering them from there. Hope that's okay, because it looks like I can't look at them at the same time as sharing screen.
I've got the questions up here. There's just the one here. Just asking if I use paper maps or maps on my phone. It's a good question, actually. For me, I have Garmin, like actually this guy, like the super huge 1030. It is color maps. I plan all my routes beforehand, and I plan the hell out of them, especially if it's into a place I don't know, because I had a bad experience last year going to a place that I thought I knew and just sort of winging it a bit. And we ended up like bushwhacking for like 3 hours, having to change the route in the dark, come home over like a highway in pitch black. My lights died. And it was like a 15-hour day when it was supposed to be like a 10-hour day, because I was lazy and didn't plan everything as much as I normally did, because I thought I knew the area. So ever since then, I've been adamant about like double plan everything. Like I usually will have the Garmin. I'll have studied the area pretty well, so I have like a good mental idea of like rough terrain and where things are going to go. And then I have one or two different maps on my features on my phone, because a lot of times you don't service when you're out there, so you can't rely 100%. Even like preloaded maps sometimes don't work. But I have a few different like mapping apps on my phone, and I'll fact check that. I don't use paper maps. I'll maybe use cue cards, but again, paper. Yeah, a lot of places I go don't have paper like maps. But what about you, Henrik?
I mean, paper maps are like just to, like, if you go somewhere, you'd have to pack like 20 of them to, I don't know, it just, I use like the app maps.me. I don't know if you have it in the US. It's like an offline maps app, but it's really great. Like you can like download obviously like the areas, and then you can literally like see everything. I mean, all of like gas stations, supermarkets, ATMs, which is like good when you're somewhere where you just don't know anything, to like, oh, there's a supermarket, or there's going to be a gas station, there's going to be I don't know, a bank, or it also says where it's like, for example, like free like water sources, fresh water, or all that stuff. So yeah, that's a pretty good app. It's maps.me.
Cool, we'll check that out.
I'm not being sponsored, but but it's definitely really, I mean, it really has like all houses, all streets, even hiking paths. So also if you like hiking, Yeah, can definitely recommend that.
Cool.
I guess I have a question relating to maps and like where you guys are going. Do you ever consult like bikepacking.com or like some, online sources and pre-existing routes, or do you guys kind of like slap together your own stuff and go from there?
When I started, I kind of looked there, and a lot of the stuff I wanted to do, it wasn't up, like they didn't really exist. And so far, a lot of the stuff I've done has been, just stuff that I've slapped together, just out of my own curiosity and like interest in the area. It's like Japan, for example. I just kind of put that together on like basically a whim of, I didn't know anything about Japan before I went, but I like, just so you spend a lot of time on heat maps. But bikepacking.com is good, I find, for some of like their technical stuff, but it's such a new like part of our sport of cycling that it's almost anything, like any tech can kind of get pushed into the bikepacking area. Obviously bags are specific, but like if you have a new like gear ratio, that like ceramics and gear ratio that works well for bikepacking. Like mountain bikes, they work like road bikes, gravel bikes, like it's pretty crazy. There's so much stuff that just goes well with this like genre of the sport. And it's cool because they target a lot of it, but now as it's growing, it's I find it's a better resource than a few years ago, because you can see some of these different areas that are like way more remote that are pretty cool. Like Kyrgyzstan is like this new hotbed. Where else? Iceland is another place that's kind of blowing up right now recently. So yeah.
My dad actually, Sean, had a question about your equipment. You're saying it was really lightweight, and he was wondering, like, I think he was getting at is just like, how did you get it that lightweight? And I guess that ties into what you were just talking about too. Is it very expensive, or is it just kind of like you just found stuff that was, that seemed to work, or yeah?
Yeah. Now, like I started with like a pretty basic setup. The first time I did it, I bought a good sleeping bag. I had an okay air mattress, and that was kind of the only stuff I really had. And then from there, I've just been building it over the years. Like initially, I started with like my fiance's like her tent. It was way too big for what I needed, but it was like the only tent I had. It wasn't super light, but it was okay. So initially, my bike was quite a bit heavier. The clothes I took were total crap. I didn't want to bring any team clothes. Like I just wanted to like roll. I had an idea in my head of what I wanted to do. And like a lot of times I have good ideas, and this clothing idea these are just all bad ideas. They're terrible. So I brought like all this like old kit from like cycling teams I'd ridden for before, and all this. It's just hindsight's 2020. But after that, I'm very fortunate in my position. I've been able to make a lot of connections over the years, and I think that's something that's really important for anybody who's watching. Is cycling has a lot of reach in not just in bike racing. It's not like you just because you're a bike racer you can only ever get like discounted tires from a company. That's almost harder to do. But as like an industry professional, I was able to reach out to Sea to Summit, Arc'teryx, Revelate, what am I missing? Big Agnes, all these companies that help me out, and then they give you like an industry deal. So like this stuff is like the light stuff is super expensive. Like I won't lie, it's like buying really nice stuff. It's just like everything else in the sport. If you can have light or you can have cheap, but you can't have both. There are like these little gems out there. Like I found a stove that was like 30 grams and it cost like $12. It might blow up, but it's super light. No, it's I spent some time. I have friends who are in like to outdoors as well, so I was able to refine my gear over the last few years, and I'm really happy with a lot of it now. I have different clothes for different kind of trips, for temperature wise. I have different wheels, different gears for the bike. I have bivy sack, tent. I have one sleeping bag weight, but it kind of works for the majority of temperature ranges. It's never really too hot and rarely too cold. If it's too cold, usually I don't want to go out. And then, yeah, my bags, Apodura helps me out now, and they're friggin' awesome. That was like instantly like 2 pounds off the bike just with bags, which is insane. Yeah. So
It's pretty like when you just, oh, sorry. Were you done?
Oh yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I changed the slide, sorry, because
No.
I wanted to show his stuff. So
I was just like, when you mentioned all these brands, like just like Big Agnes, Revelate, and all that, I just had to think, because that's pretty much all the brands we wrote them if they want to sponsor us. And so we did, like, do you guys know Oddleap, who do
Yep.
also bikepacking? Yeah, so we got just to like put in perspective that, like, I mean, we are like obviously don't have like that big of reach, but we did get 40% off all the Oddleap bags,
Nice.
the bikepacking stuff. So it's like actually we kind of just like wrote to them. We didn't like just write emails, like we actually sent letters and kind of like wrote like to the companies, kind of like read what these companies kind of stand for, and what they kind of would want to have from us and what we would want to have from them. So we actually did get, I think, 4 sponsors for like gear. So that was really, I mean, we probably got, and I mean, our Instagram account is like not that big, but I think they kind of like the idea. And often it's just really about if the people kind of like you or not, I guess, or if they think it's like a cool idea. So I think we got probably like over 1,000 euros worth in gear from like sponsors, even though our Instagram account is like not that big and we also don't have like that big of reach. But yeah, like that's definitely possible to get sponsors for a trip. I mean, it can, like, if you kind of just like go a week around your hometown, like you're probably not gonna get sponsors, but kind of depends on what you're doing. But
yeah, and it's you're telling a story, and if you're telling it with, you're going to tell it with somebody's gear, so it might as well be there. So it's a no-brainer for them. It's just like, you know, the trip you guys would have done would have been a story that, like, it would have been told regardless. So if they can give you the discount and they sell stuff, it's a win-win. And that's
they also, so I mean, they want to get like pictures and stuff, and also for them, I mean, like a photo shoot in like mountains for like Oddleap would, I mean, I don't know how much that would cost, but like way more than just giving us 2 guys like 40% off their gear. So
exactly.
They're really, I mean, they're really getting something out of that.
So it sounds like that even though that, you know, bikepacking and what you guys have seemed like you're doing isn't necessarily like a competitive thing, is that through social media is that you're able to gain these sponsors anyway.
Yeah, there's value in everything, and I think that's, for me at least, that's a big draw, is that it's not competitive. I like to escape the seriousness of road racing sometimes, and especially like when you're out there, like really out there, and you don't have your cell phone anymore. Especially like a lot of these trips I did this summer were just by myself. So. Yeah, like to tell that story is, I think it's pretty awesome for these companies to reach and get those photos, and it's kind of like what they're about, right? Is allowing people to go on adventures, like whether that's just away for the weekend overnight, like close to home, or whether that's, you know, a trip across your country. It's like, these are all great stories.
Yeah, I mean, they did. I mean, like most of the companies we wrote like to a lot, most of them didn't answer. But like some of them did answer and said like why they're not sponsoring us was often because we just don't have enough Instagram followers, pretty much. So that really is kind of the currency. But I mean, like for some companies, it seemingly like they were right with that. We had like this cool idea, and we're potentially going to get like more followers during the trip. But yeah, I guess like definitely social media reach is kind of like the currency. But you can definitely. I mean, we texted, like, we wrote to them, and they agreed to sponsor us when we had like 100 Instagram followers, and like we got a lot more doing it, like some more doing the trip. But yeah, it's, you kind of just have like, or be persuasive and be enthusiastic about it. And often there's, I mean, the people from the companies themselves are like outdoor fans, and so they kind of think it's cool. So yeah.
Sweet. All right, Henry, I'll show your slides. That's yours.
No, that's still Rob's.
Oh, that was just mountain in the background there is Mount Fuji. So it's kind of like a pretty iconic mountain in Japan. I think everybody knows Mount Fuji. So yeah, this is, I think, the second last day of our Japan trip. Kind of this, yeah, you can't see it here, but I've got my friends kind of in the background, and this is like getting near the end of the trip, and they're like, I was starting to feel better and better, and they were just so cracked. To get up to this point was like, I think, an hour and a half long, like, climb of mountain pass. Like, we're pretty high, even like though the mountain looks super high in the background. We're like at like this mountain lake, and we're on about halfway through the day at this point. So yeah, this is yeah, there's comedy in the beauty, but it's also something like this. It makes all those hard hours, like, leading into it, totally worthwhile, because that's why you're there, right? It's to see things like this that otherwise you'd never see. So that's, I think, it's a pretty iconic picture to show just where you can go with your bike. Like, I grew up riding a bike in Saskatchewan, a place that most people can't point out on a map. No one raced professionally there, and certainly never bike packed when I grew up. And now, through bike racing and then bike packing, I've been able to see some of these places, like some of the most iconic sites in the world, because simply just because I rode my bike there. And it's cool because I can transcend across pretty much anybody, like anybody who's watching this right now can ride a bike. So there's, that's the hard part. Like, so, you can use this bike to kind of do so much and see so many things. So yeah, I thought this was kind of a cool slide to put in there.
It looks like we have another question in the box. I can't see it, but
okay.
Can you guys?
Here. How many friends and how big was your group? So I have this like crew of like really close friends that I've made, like these, like, and like as you guys get older, like, like you're gonna make like these lifelong friends. Like, the sport's pretty good about that. Like, you just sort of like, you have so many hard moments, whether you're like sleeping like in some like, homestay and there's 6 of you in like some dingy basement, or like, you're going on a bike packing trip. It's like you forge these like lifelong friendships through the sport. So you know who you can trust for these trips, because they're hard mentally. So you want to take like people who can take it. So I have a crew of like 4 or 5 friends, and I just sort of send these emails out to them when I have an idea, or vice versa. And for the big Canada trip, 3 of my good friends, one did part of it with us, and the other 2 did the whole thing. And then for the Japan trip, I reached out to the same crew. It's a bit more of a commitment. So I had one of them who's like, he's like a CEO of a company, who's a father to be, has a child now, married, very busy lifestyle. But pretty much when I come up with all these stupid ideas, I'm like, hey, let's go do like 500K ride. He's like, yeah, that sounds great. I'm in. Like, he's like, I'm the boss. We'll figure it out. It's fine. I'm like, okay. So Taylor, he's always in, like, permanent, like, self-proclaimed yes man, which is awesome for me. And then my friend Sean, who I've known Sean for 20 years. We grew up racing bikes in Saskatchewan. He spent the first few years beating me, then we didn't see each other for a while, and then I've been beating him for the last decade. So like, it's good. So we know each other, and like we can like joke around and have fun, and like you know each other well enough that the hard times aren't so bad, because you really do have hard times on those like long days, 8, 10, 12, 14-hour days on the bike. You get hungry, you get like grumpy. So you have to have a group of people. You can't do it with just anybody. Like there's that kind of challenge to it. So yeah, and 3 is a good number. for a lot of different reasons. Two, unless you're like very much on the same page with fitness and like mindset. Two can be a problem because if you disagree about something, there's no one there to like mediate. Like, okay, like if you disagree and think it's wrong, but like there's 2 against 1, you're automatically outvoted. So you just kind of go the way of the majority. And it also helps with like other critical decisions, or just there's 2 people can go in the store at once instead of just 1 and 1. It's 3 is a great number, 4 is a great number, 2 is it's okay, but it just limits you with a lot of different things. So yeah.
I've never done like with actual like bikepacking equipment like 8, 10 or 12 hours per day. So yeah, I just had to laugh at that. Yeah, I bet that's pretty tough.
Yeah, Henrik, what are kind of lengths that you do?
I mean, it depends where I'm going, but yeah, probably more like 5, 6 hours. Yeah, more like 5.
Like a reasonable amount of hours. That's reasonable. That's good. That's what normal people should do.
I'd say. Yeah, I mean, also depends. Like when it's winter, it's also like when it's dark. I don't know. Kind of want to have a camp spot before it's dark. Yeah, I guess like 5 hours probably.
So it's one of these. It's one of those things you can kind of make it what you want. Like, I guess it's different in bike racing. It's like the bike race is the bike race. Like you're just gonna do it. But in this, you kind of have some. You get to have some control of what you want out of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times, I think at this point, I've only had Japan. We had 2 spots actually. We had to adjust our finish and change them. Just we weren't going to make our targets. We knew that before, so we adjusted the route to make the target. But yeah, I've never actually not made it to where we wanted to get to, which is pretty sweet so far. I like one way or another, I always get to where I want to go. Just sometimes it's a lot darker and colder than I like it to be. But yeah, where there's a will, there's certainly the way to get there on the bike. You just kind of keep pedaling. But yeah, it was crazy in the summer because normally I do it in the off season because it's harder to sneak them in during the season. But this summer, because I was able to do these like 13, 14-hour days. Like 280K, just like slogging away because you have this daylight. You get after it like 6:30 in the morning, and then it doesn't get dark till like 9. So it's pretty sweet to have that and just like turning the light on just the last little bit. So yeah. Good.
There's like another question in the chat. Do you want to?
Okay. Yeah, Henrik, you guys can take it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've never like done bikepacking really on a road bike, so I guess that's more.
Question is it possible to bike pack on a road bike in all the same places you've been? Have you only encountered road terrain, or are there other terrains as well? Japan was like 95% or more paved. Like every road in Japan is like immaculately paved. It's insane. But
there we go.
I think the first one we did was almost all dirt. I'd say probably 85% dirt. So it was all gravel bike. I got a pretty good flat partway through and had to literally duct tape or Gorilla tape my tire together. I had like a hole like that big through it. But I really wanted to keep it too loose, so I put some plugs in and then like wrapped Gorilla tape around because you don't need the rim anymore because it's disc brakes. So did that and rode for about 100 miles at a time and then changed the Gorilla tape out. But it worked like a charm. Yeah, so I've done both. I've never done a mountain bike trip. I was really close this summer to doing one. There's some pretty big mountains north of Vancouver, like above Whistler. It's like world-renowned mountain biking, and I was going to do a trip there. But you need a mountain bike to really make it work. So I ran out of resources and time to make that happen, but it's definitely on the bucket list. But I've definitely kind of done road and gravel. The majority of the stuff I do is probably more tailored to gravel, just because it gets me away from cars and where I spend most of my time. So, and when you're just in nature, it's kind of like, for me, a big chunk of it is to just kind of get away from the day-to-day norm. So cool. Henrik, let's check out your stuff.
Yeah.
This one's not loading for some reason, so we'll go to this one.
Oh yeah, that one. That's a sweet one. So I guess from like the trips are like I'm probably going to be mostly talking about like a trip that I did earlier this year for 3 months. So it was going to be 6 months, but with Corona it was only 3 months. I went with my brother together. We started like right from Berlin, kind of from the Brandenburg Gate and all that, like, and went through all of Eastern Europe, like all the capital cities pretty much, Prague, Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, all that, and then to the Black Sea and took a ferry over, which was pretty cool, like a freight ship, and then through Georgia and Azerbaijan. And then Baku in Azerbaijan is kind of where like Corona kind of got us, because all the borders were closed around us, so there was really nowhere to go anymore. But yeah, that picture is in Azerbaijan, where we kind of, so we had arrived in Baku, but we kind of wanted to, because the situation was a little unclear, so we did like a 3-day kind of trip from Baku to like the desert surrounding, and that was really sick, because just like how it looks there, it's all was kind of just sand and grass and all kind of green, red, and yellow, like in the middle of nowhere. There's lots of like shepherds. So we met like a few shepherds. They, of course, like with the language, it's kind of like, of course, they don't speak English, and we had learned some Russian, but like deep kind of like the shepherds there also didn't speak Russian, so you couldn't really talk anything, but it's kind of like just like with hand and feet you can kind of communicate. My bike, I think I have like a picture later probably from my bike. One more, like,
skip forward.
Or maybe it's that one that's not loading.
Oh,
I don't know.
Shoot.
But like on that trip, you can probably see better there. On the right, that's my brother. On the left, that's me. That was in the Czech Republic, because we started in January, which was obviously pretty cold then, like in Eastern Europe. And so we had some snow there. And I think my bike weighed around 45 kilos, kind of also like with water and with the food and all that. We had like lots of stuff, because we were going for like 3 months, or 6 months when we set off, so kind of had everything.
So
we needed to.
45 kilos for us Americans is like, I don't know how many pounds that is.
Oh, my bad.
100 pounds.
It's 90 pounds, like
90 to 100 pounds. It sounds about right. Yeah. How did that feel? Do you think that changed, like, because like, you think about like a aero racing bike, kind of like, Rob's experience is that you have a very, very different approach there.
Yeah, definitely. Like you feel good, like when you're, you like when there's a gust of wind or something, it's not gonna get you, which is nice. And like for example, when you're riding downhill, also like you're obviously pretty stable, but then when you're riding uphill, obviously, that's when you kind of feel all the kilos or pounds.
Do you think that your route choices are affected by the weight of your bike? Is that you try to avoid steep hills, or?
No, we also, like, for that trip, we didn't plan a route. Our route was pretty much like Berlin, Prague, Vienna, and then in between we kind of just like put it into maps.me, or like there's the Danube River that goes through Europe. There's like a cycle path with like pretty much in most of the countries, is there. So sometimes we follow the bike path, sometimes just maps on me. And yeah, I mean, we kind of just went from city to city. Like we didn't plan any routes in between. We're just kind of like see where what road is gonna get us there.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we also, like with all the baggage, I mean, obviously we also, for example, packed some normal clothes for like when we're in the cities, you know, what you wouldn't do for like a shorter or like an only sports kind of trip. So we also did have like normal pants and sweater and that stuff to like not be walking around with cycling clothes in cities. Yeah.
So it definitely adds on weight when you do that.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like we packed all right. Like we didn't have too much. I mean, we really packed on the necessary stuff. Like we met lots of other people who had a lot more like bags or like stuff than we had. So we were actually, I feel like, pretty light on the way. But
You want me to go ahead?
yeah, sure. Oh yeah, that was kind of because like in our trips or in like that trip, it was kind of like to get to know the other cultures was like the greatest thing of it, or like to get to know the other, like the countries there was kind of like the greatest thing about the trip. Especially because all the people were so friendly. Like that was just a funny picture. That was the left one is from Bulgaria, where we kind of just like stopped at a gas station, and then these dudes were like, it was like Friday 1 p.m. or something. They had like their self-made liquor and a barbecue, and so they just got us like a glass here. There you go, and then we had some barbecue with them, and
living a good life.
yeah, definitely. Just yeah, we kind of had to be careful not to drink too much because we had to ride our bike. But and the right one is in Azerbaijan. There was they often had like these grill or like kind of stoves where they made bread and stuff. And also they're like the people in Azerbaijan were pretty much the greatest people that we met, because they always invited us for food. Like when we were riding, I mean, everybody like waved at us and or honked their cars, and many people just like invited us for food. Like for example at that place, and we're like, hey, come on, like we've got some tea and food and stuff, and then like we didn't have to pay anything. Like we got invited for food so many times and never had to pay anything. And I mean, that wouldn't happen to you in like Western Europe. Like you wouldn't get invited by random people for a cup of tea or something. So, and that was really kind of what like the greatest thing about the trip, to see the other countries. And also when you're like riding with a bike instead of the car, you kind of you know, you ride through all the little villages and kind of see what the people are doing, what it smells like. You hear the people talking. And you kind of see that like all these countries, I mean, you always have like these prejudices, like Eastern Europe, it's dangerous and all that stuff, but it really is not. Like we never I mean, like we were never afraid that something was going to get stolen or something, because all the people were just so friendly. And it really, I mean, it's kind of like, it sounds a little I don't know, but like the world is actually kind of a better place than you often think, or like the people in these countries are really way greater, like just because it's a poor country. um yeah, the people are like, even kind of like the further east we got, the friendlier the people got. So yeah,
It's one thing to like hear about it and one thing to experience it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one thing to know what the economy is like and what their government is like, but the actual people there is just, yeah, so cool to like meet people there and see how nice they are, and yeah, to kind of actually see the countries instead of just hearing about them.
Sounds like there's a few questions in the chat for you.
Yeah. So, how old were you when So on the trip this year, I was 19. And how old was I when I came to the US? Yeah, I did a year abroad in the US in high school. So I was 15 when I got here, when I got to the US. And then when I did this bike trip this year, I was 19. So, and yeah, the other question, how do you take your bike to the place you go to when you go into flight? You take apart the bike, pack it in a box, and then build it after reaching. So how do I take my bike to the places? Like the trip, I mean, that trip we literally started from home. So that was really kind of my, I always wanted to do that, to just literally start from home and go somewhere. That was kind of like a cool thing to actually like riding the bike from home to that place far away. But then we had to take a flight back from Azerbaijan because of Corona. And yeah, we did take, that was not too easy. Like we found cardboard like in trash cans and behind supermarkets and stuff, because the bike shops weirdly didn't really have any. And we kind of, just took the front wheel off. Like we didn't really deassemble the bikes, kind of like took the handlebar off and the front wheel, and definitely put it in a box. Yeah, put like lots of wrap around, lots of like paper stuff so it doesn't kind of get damaged. I mean, it probably is different when you have a carbon bike as opposed to like a aluminum bike. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty funny, actually. Clever. We when we did our trip to Japan last year, obviously that was flying point to point. A big part of it was actually figuring out the logistics of, because we're going to fly there with bike bags. So we each of us have like our own different like whatever Sicon or soft case bag, and that's no problem. But the trick was, once we got there, we had to find a place, like a hotel that could either hold it for us, which most hotels, not all of them at least, have like luggage rooms, let alone like something that's like the size of like a small piano, that you can just leave there for a week. So we actually did manage to find that, because otherwise we were going to have to figure out what to do with this, like leave it at a bike shop, and then how do you get your bike? Because having a bike and a bike bag is actually really awkward when you're in a place. You can't just like drag that around town, especially around Tokyo. So with Japan, that's what we did. And my other trips have always kind of been like you, Henrik, I start and finish at home, or when I did Worlds, actually, I was on my gravel bike, so I just left my bike at my friend's house and then came and got it like a month later. I ended up being back out on the West Coast again, so picked it up and flew home with it then. But yeah, thankfully in North America, you can usually find bike boxes. But yeah, in Azerbaijan, that would be, or Baku, that would definitely be a problem I wouldn't want to have to solve.
Yeah. That was actually, can recommend that city. Nice one.
Sweet.
Yeah. But that's actually the thing that, I mean, when you like fly to, for example, in Baku, the people there knew tourists, so often you get kind of like felt like you were being ripped off because they obviously saw that you're foreigners. And so like we kind of noticed that it was really different, the people from the countryside as opposed to the people in the city, because the people in the city know tourists and that they can make money off that kind of.
More free tea.
So you might have you might think that Azerbaijanis all want to rip you off when you only fly to Baku and back home. So that's like really a different experience, I think, you make.
You want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, that was when we arrived. That was really like one of the greatest moments of the whole trip, because that was kind of like when we rode up to that, it was like a huge highway, and when we rode up to that city sign, it's kind of like the realization that we actually had ridden from Berlin just with our bikes all the way to Baku. When you saw that, and Baku is like right at the Caspian Sea, and so yeah, that was like really one of the kind of like greatest feelings in my life I've had to just like see that city sign and be there, and like that we've kind of made it there. It's I think 3,500 kilometers, and yeah, to just like ride from home there, that actually works. So like lots of people yeah, said like, oh, you're crazy, or by the way, the guy on the right is like another German cyclist who we met on the road. We cycled like like 5 days together. Yeah. So that was a pretty cool picture, or a pretty cool moment.
Not bad, young man.
Yeah. Oh, that's actually. Oh yeah, that's another one that's kind of also from that desert there. That was just really cool pictures. And is there another one? I mean, that's kind of like the same.
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering
that's it.
Okay, yeah.
Actually.
No, that was
that
really also a cool trip. We kind of just went out there, and so you can kind of see. I'm like my brother on the right. He's kind of like he dressed kind of differently than me. I mean, like you see, I'm kind of in cycling clothes, and he like more to just like a shirt and like normal pants and stuff. But yeah, I want to say something. Oh yeah, I actually did just like another bikepacking trip. I went to France this summer and kind of did like a Tour de France pretty much. I just like went there, and that's where I went there by train and just kind of rode like for 21 days, just like all the mountains up and down. And so it's like really not that hard to just it's really, you know, when you like hear big mountains and stuff, and Alpe d'Huez and the Galibier and all that, there's big mountains, and like if you're gonna make it or something, but it's really kind of like as long as you just keep pedaling, like it doesn't really, like you shouldn't be afraid of mountains or like hard routes. It's kind of like just a mental thing. Like if you if you really want to do it, you really can do it. It's kind of
So like make that a quote. If you really want to do it, you can do it, Henrik.
Yeah,
it's good.
Just don't stop pedaling.
I feel like the bike is
actually
very special though. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm making like a film right now about like that Tour de France I did this summer. So gonna put that on YouTube. I filmed like a lot with my GoPro. It was pretty sick. France is actually pretty sweet place to ride your bike, especially the Alps. Obviously, like that was super pretty to camp like up there at like 2,500 meters, and have kind of baguette and cheese all every day. Yeah,
that's France.
Sweet. Well, it's 6:00. If we have any other questions in the chat, we definitely should answer them. But yeah, thanks for sharing your guys' stories, and it was really cool to hear the two different sides of your guys' both approaches, like how you guys approach this, and so it was, thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, there's 2 questions. Yes, it was a pleasure. It was fun to talk about this. One of the questions is, what would be our advice for a junior who wants to start bikepacking? As a junior, you're already, everything is, relatively speaking, everything is pretty new to you guys. And I think specializing when you're young isn't necessarily the best approach. And this is just and when I say specializing, I mean like saying like, oh, I'm a sprinter, I'm only gonna do sprint stuff. Like, you know, as a junior, do it all. Like, try it all out. Maybe you find that this is something that like you're interested in, and if you are, like, there's so many great resources out there. Like, you know, reach out to anybody around you that has experience in it, and plan your own adventure, because it's only becoming more and more popular and more accessible. And you don't necessarily have to do like a 14-day trip, or like what Henrik did is super impressive. Like 3 months pretty much straight out the gate is a lot to take on, obviously, but there's some pretty amazing stuff you can do. Like in California, like I spent lots of time just north of where you are in Santa Cruz. Like there's tons of cool stuff out there, and you can do just like little things on the weekend. And I think it's just something that will give you a better appreciation when you do the hard stuff in road racing as well. And I think there's plenty of physiological stuff that you can get out of it too. So yeah. But well, yeah, I don't know. Try it out. Yeah, that's
definitely. I mean, it's just like just having fun on your bike. I mean, it's kind of like depending on how fit you are, you can go further or less distance. Pretty much, really, like it doesn't really matter. So yeah, it's kind of just having fun on the bike and seeing stuff. It's like really cool. I just love being out in nature and get away from the city, kind of.
Any recommendations on equipment starting out? I mean, for somebody that's just getting into it, right? You'd have a huge startup cost if you had to buy all the gear.
I'd say with this stuff, just because a lot of it you can kind of like roll over to camping or just do any other sort of like outdoors type things. With bikepacking, honestly, in my experience, it's just sort of like if you buy cheap, buy twice. Like it's worth it to spend a bit more extra money on a better product than to like try to save a bit of money and have a bag tear off, when you're riding, and then have to figure that out when you're on the trail, or have a sleeping bag that was cheap but then doesn't pack up, so now you actually can't take all the stuff you want to do. Or I'm not necessarily saying like buy the best Gore shake dry like jacket you can get at $600, but trying to work within your budget. And you don't have to get it all at once. You can kind of, a lot of the stuff people have, reach out to your friends. Like a lot of people have this stuff and they're not even using it. Like I had friends who had bikepacking bags and never gone bikepacking. They just got it because they thought it was cool and they were just sitting there. I have friends that have nice sleeping bags, nice air matches. So a lot of this stuff you can kind of like, beg, borrow, and like steal your way to an introductory experience, because exactly like what you just said it's a pretty big cost up front if you just want to go for a bikepacking trip, and then all of a sudden it's $3,000. Like it's the cost of like a nice bike just to get all the kit. So especially now it's becoming more popular. Let's say just trying to borrow it. It's like a time trial bike, right? You try to borrow one before you really buy a time trial bike. So you can reach out and use your resources. Like I'm always happy, like, because I love the sport, I'm always happy to lend my gear out to people. So would be my advice.
Very cool.
I mean, I'd only definitely recommend get like waterproof bags. There's you kind of have to read, there's lots of also bikepacking bags that are like water resistant or something like that. And I would definitely go for waterproof, but it just literally makes you happy when you're riding through rain and then you open a bag and it's just dry inside. That's very nice.
Ortlieb's been well known to make basically dry bags, so to be able to
exactly, and we used some. I mean, maybe you saw on the bike, we used some of the bikepacking bags, but also I think 2 or 3 actually just dry bags, pretty much. I mean, and you can use these dry bags that are pretty cheap. You can use them when you go kayaking or when you go hiking or on a bike trip. That's pretty versatile. It's definitely, just as Rob said, get something rather nicer than trying to save money, because once you have it, you can use it more often. That was kind of for that bigger trip, we had to pay some more money for equipment, but now I'm super happy that I actually have the equipment, because I can, every time I want to go out, I can just go out. I mean, it's not like you're just gonna buy it for one time. You're just gonna have it and then be able to use it all the time.
Totally.
Do you
Yeah,
guys
so-
have any?
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, do you guys have any last minute or last like comments for anybody that's trying to get into bikepacking, or any juniors getting into bikepacking, like in terms of like length, or, and it looks like I kind of reviewed size question. It looked pretty long, but he's basically asking like, how do you find, friends to ride with, or like basically like how do you find someone stupid enough to go and do some of these things with you, or like, what would you guys say to a junior or somebody just starting off in bikepacking?
Yeah. Honestly, like I said kind of earlier, you'll have your friends, and you should have a pretty good idea of the people you want to like put on that list of like bad ideas for down the road kind of thing. But just starting out, it's like just go with your buddies, and like you're gonna do funny. Like the nice thing about youth is like you can do a lot of pretty dumb things and get away with it, and it works out pretty well. And like I mean that in like the best possible sense. That's like what makes this so fun, is like a lot of like you have to really screw up to be in a really bad situation. Most of the time it's like worst case scenario is just you go without dinner, or like you have a cold sleep, and that's like you'll have to tell about it, and that's like you learn from it. And that's, I could tell you guys 100 stories, but you're still gonna have to go out there and kind of like, it's very much to go out and figure it out for yourself kind of thing. So it's like just you find that group of people, whether it's 2 or 3 people you go out with, and you just make your own adventures and figure out what works for you and what kind of trips you like to do. Like, because what you might like to do is different than what I might like to do. Like, I like to ride for 10 hours a day, but most people don't. Like, and I get that. Like, I get really hangry if I haven't eaten, but at the same time, I can also go like a day without eating if it means like achieving like what we're trying to get done. So it's like that, and that's different than like a lot of other people. And I also know that I need to have friends around me that are patient because of that. And yeah, like the costs are expensive, but like Henrik like nailed it. Once you have this stuff, you can use it, and because it is so popular right now, the sweet thing is like if you hate it, you can probably sell it for about what you bought it for. So like there is some like resale value to this stuff in the short term for sure. So if you hate it, you can just kind of pass it on. But I'd say if you're on here watching, you probably are interested. So yeah, I mean, most of us are in a place that's going to start to get a lot colder, and the days are going to get a lot shorter here for a bit. But just plan a little trip and check it out.
Yeah, and I think like regarding distance. Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah. Like it really doesn't matter. I just, if you're like starting out, just try whatever. I mean, if you just think, oh, I'm gonna do 200 kilometers, like just try it. And if you do, nice. And if you don't, then I know it's dark, but you're gonna like find some place to sleep or something. Or if you want to start off like with less, just start off with less. Like it's kind of like trial and error, You'll see. I mean, we often like when we were on our trip, like in the first days, we kind of like we thought, all right, we're gonna do like, I don't know, today we're gonna do like 110 kilometers. But then we ended up, because we had like, I don't know, there was like we took like an unexpected detour, or then the path was really bad, or something else just got in the way, and it's kind of like yeah, and we ended up doing much less. But it's really just kind of just try it, and yeah, you're gonna see if it works or not.
I feel like it's that first step, right? Like you just got to do it, and then once you've done it, you kind of you started, right?
Yeah,
I feel
from
like
there, yeah.
Yeah.
There was like another question in the chat. Do you have a specific cause, or was it just a personal goal? I mean, like for me, it was that trip earlier in the year was really. I mean, I've always wanted to do that, just kind of like go east. We wanted to go to like Central Asia, actually, to like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan. There, like we would have gone there afterwards from Azerbaijan, which sucked that we couldn't. But yeah, it was kind of more like because you wouldn't go to these countries for a holiday, so it's like, yeah, I might as well just like ride my bike there. We did like, I mean, a specific cause, like we did like raise money to donate for was like a project for kind of in Tajikistan, like a German, like how do you call it? They were helping people that were suffering hunger in Tajikistan. So yeah, well, that was even like worse, that we couldn't go there to like actually see what it's like there. But that was just one of the poorest countries on the way, so we thought that's why we like wanted to donate there. But yeah, I mean, more to just like explore, to kind of see other countries that you wouldn't see on a holiday, or just mostly just go out in the nature, kind of. Just I mean, sleeping in a tent is just really cool to like get outside. I guess that's, I mean, because like I of course, like there was like a big trip, 3 months, but also I wouldn't like now just go for that far. Like maybe now I would just go for like a week because I just love being outside, and I wouldn't go to like Azerbaijan. Maybe I would just like ride. I'm in Manchester right now. I would maybe just like ride for a week, like somewhere around the area, just because I like being outside and stuff. So you don't have to like do these huge like yeah, that's kind of my cause, just being outside. I mean, what about you, Rob?
Yeah, I do it for my sanity. It's pretty much the biggest cause. We raise some money for the long rides up island, but yeah, for the most part, I just I make a lot of sacrifices to do what I love, and I'm very fortunate. I love what I do. But at the end of the year, there's a lot of things like I'm left wanting for, and like that sense of adventure to go and do something like this just doesn't go away with racing. So that's where a lot of these trips kind of like manifest from, is this like undying sense of adventure, and I need to do that. And yeah, I'm super fortunate that right now I'm like very, very time wealthy for the most part, so I can yeah, take advantage, and thankfully I've got some good mates who can do it with me. So yeah, I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if you're trying it out, I mean, you don't, I guess like bikepacking is cool right now, maybe, or something like that. But like if you, I mean, you can try it out, and if you don't like it, like that's probably all right. And probably not all people like sleeping in a tent for like a few nights. So I guess it's, yeah, you kind of have to like being outside, or yeah, having it not so nice, like when it's wet or something, when you're riding like 12 hours a day and don't have enough to eat or something. But yeah, there's another question: did either of you stay in people's homes or only camp? Did you use warm showers? I think, yeah, like we didn't use warm showers, but lots of other people did that we met on the road. I think that's like a really good website. I know we didn't end up using it. We did stay in people's homes. Like first in Vienna, we like knew friends, but then I'm just thinking, like a few times we kind of like, when we didn't really find, when we were like in a really city kind of area, and we couldn't really find somewhere, we sometimes just kind of asked people if we could kind of like camp in the garden or something. Yeah, other than that, I mean, like almost always in hostels, but then like every like 5 or 6 days we always camping. Then like every 5 or 6 days we did stay in a hostel to kind of dry our stuff and wash stuff and have a shower and kind of charge phones and that. So yeah.
Yeah, you need to recharge every couple of days. We're the same. It's we probably do it a bit more frequent because the trips are a bit shorter, and the kit's pretty tight. So yeah, we usually like every 3 to 4 days we'd stay in a hotel. Otherwise camping. Yeah, I've never. It worked out when we did the BC trip. I stayed at one of my friends' his house is literally on the route, so we crashed there one night, which was awesome. We kind of used that as our hotel night. But yeah, for the long ones, usually 3 to 4 days. And it's the same as Henrik said. You travel with like your little battery packs, but everything like eventually kind of just gets pretty low on battery. So you kind of need a night. Like you get used to sleeping in a tent, but you're always going to sleep better in like a nice like hotel bed, nice hot shower, like wash and dry your clothes, kind of like start fresh, like restock food, this kind of stuff. Have like a normal meal and like, well, when you get older, cold beer. But yeah, it's nice to get that going every few days. Yeah, as awesome as it is going to bed when it's like just above freezing and without dinner and knowing you don't have breakfast until you ride to somewhere with breakfast the next morning, has limits on fun too.
I'm amazed you didn't have dinner from time to time. Like that was like the one constant. Like we made dinner every night. Like how would you go to bed without dinner?
When you get older, yeah, it's like whiskey. That's no. There was just one night in particular. We thought we were going to get to a campsite, and if timing would have worked out right, we didn't just realize we had to climb basically the Japanese call the Tourmalet to get there. So climbed up like 2,700 meters and then descended down. It's freezing cold, very dark, and then just had insult to injury. Rode past a town that looked very closed, and then we rode up like I think it was like 25%. It was insanely steep. It was 2K at just this insane gradient. It took us like 45 minutes to get up this stupid 2K climb at the end of the day. So we just dried off from this descent, and then we got all soaking wet, sweating, and then we got to the campsite, and everything was closed. So we got to camp for free, which was great. The ground was frozen, like the pegs for the tent barely went into the ground. And the food we bought at the restaurant we got stuff at a grocery store or like a convenience store, but it was all not what we thought it was, because it was just like mislabeled like Japanese packages, and we thought we were buying like pasta and sauce, and it just turned out to be like fish flavored tomato sauce, and no like noodles. So that was pretty heartbreaking at like 10 at night. And yeah, it's like you're wearing everything you have and you have your stove going, and you're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
just have some tea for dinner. I think I had like, I don't know, like some like mini donuts, like a chocolate bar or something, and I had half of whatever I had, and then had the other half for breakfast in the morning. Yeah, that was rock. Every trip has a rock bottom, and that was probably that. When you're like, we all could hear each other that night, kind of rustling around, like the sound of like the sleeping bags moving on the air mattress, because it was so cold, no one could really sleep. You just sort of drift in and out. But like we all like get up and put more and more on till we're all wearing like everything we have inside of the bag. Like you have like your beanie on, like you kind of like eventually just wait till it's daylight and then get up and have coffee. But yeah, I try to not go without eating, but every once in a while, make a mistake.
Yeah. I mean, just if like people are wondering or something, like we most of the time just made pasta or lentils. Actually, lentils are also pretty good. And always like carrots, onions. That's like pretty simple, and you can get it kind of in every country in the world. You're gonna get carrots and onions. We also made porridge like every day for breakfast. That was more like oatmeal. That was more because it was so cold. Like I guess if it's warmer, then you don't really need like warm food. But yeah, really depends where you are.
Yeah, oats are awesome for breakfast because they don't take up much space. They're like, you can get by pretty far on a pretty little amount of oats. Like if you're like rationing space to wait.
Yeah.
And if it's cold, which it almost always is in the mornings, it's a pretty tasty snack to have to start the day. And you just boil enough water for that and coffee. You have to have coffee. That's the rule number one about bikepacking. Always make sure you have coffee. If you don't have coffee, don't even start the trip. Just wait until you can get coffee going.
Oh, we didn't have coffee.
Oh,
well, on that note, I really want to thank you guys for coming on. This has been a great discussion about bikepacking and getting juniors going in that avenue of sport. And I'm really thankful, Robert, that you mentioned that, being specific in the sport at a really early age isn't really a great idea. And exploring these types of options can really help the kids learn something about themselves as well as about the sport and where they fit in and what things they're really going to enjoy in the sport. I think that's great. And Henrik, I mean, I had thought you were older than you were based on what you would, what exploits you had. So, I mean, it's really great to see somebody at your age, which is basically the same age as Hunter, being able to do these types of things and go basically across, the length of the United States, just you and your brother, taking off. That's great.
Yeah.
So again, I really want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. This will be available on our YouTube channel coming up. And I just want to say goodnight and thank you very much. And Henrik, get some sleep.
Yeah, thanks. I've got lecture in 7.5 hours. So.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
On Sunday?
No, it's on Monday, tomorrow.
Monday.
Monday. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Saturday. All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, guys.
Right.
Appreciate it. Great chat.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks for having us.